One day, as you're walking by a railroad track, you get groceries for your kids so they don't go hungry. A bomb went off, and the railroad that brings supplies to your land is completely destroyed. Little did you know this was because of a neighboring country that just wanted to protect their own land by expanding their land that they have. And so, with this, you learn that Japan invaded China and where you live. Little did you know this was going to be totally different lifestyle than what you had been living. Japan invaded Manchuria towards the end of World War II. It decided to invade because it wanted to protect its mainland, where Tokyo is. And so by expanding to other islands past it and to China, it could protect its inner land that it had the whole time. This way, someone attacked them, they could be head on instead of them just attacking their main cities. In Manchuria, China, life changed drastically for the civilians. There was forced labor. There was sexual slavery, human experimentation, starvation, massacres that occurred during this time. Why did Japan invade Manchuria? Well, they believe China started it with their act of war. A bomb went off by the Japan Railroad, but the railroad was still intact. The train made it to trade, and they could still get the supplies they needed. But Japan saw this as an act of war towards them. And so, in retaliation, they bombed the Chinese railroad. And instead of doing the same thing that was done to them, the rail was completely destroyed. And so with this, life changed drastically for the civilians. They couldn't get the supplies they needed, so they had to make it all on their own. A lot of people were forced into labor, such as farming, making clothes, doing whatever the Japan needed them to do at this time. Unfortunately for the women, they were sent to sexual slavery, where many of them were raped by the Japanese for pleasure. While they were in Japan was in Manchuria, the best way to use the civilians that went in forced labor or women in sexual slavery was to do human experimentation on them, mainly biological warfare, which is where you take a disease that is new to the human being and you infect them with it. And since it's new, their immune system doesn't know how to fight it. And so with this, many people died, and Japan learned a lot about killing people with simple diseases. With this, there also became starvation in the land. Since the railroad was destroyed, they couldn't get food in or out of China. And there was just not enough food for the Japanese and the Chinese people. So the Japanese took most of the food and gave little to the Chinese citizens. And with this, a lot of people died through the hard work they were doing and not getting enough food for it. With this, there was also a fight that occurred in a city. And sadly, Japan just decided to kill everyone. Those who fought, those who didn't, those women, those children, everything happened. With this became an incident where other nations had to get involved to get the Chinese people back into China and Japan out of China. It took a while for this to happen, so many citizens died during this time. But Luckily, it all came to an end later, a couple years later. Stories like this are pushed under the rug because another event overpassed it. During this time, World War II was happening, and many people did not get to hear the story of what Japan did to the Chinese people.